Now I'd like to define some terms from the philosophy of religion. Theism refers to the view that God does in fact exist. In contrast, atheism argues that God does not exist. Then between those two perspectives is a view called agnosticism, which suggests that either I can't know or no one can know whether or not God exists. There simply isn't enough definitive evidence. And as this chart suggests, there are degrees of certainty in terms of how strongly someone believes in their theism or their atheism, ranging from the probabilist to the rationalist. And this says a bit more about agnostics and atheists, describing those different positions. Okay, if God does exist, or gods do exist, how many are they? What are they like? Monotheism is the idea that there is one God, and ethical monotheism, which is by far the most common form, represented by Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, is the view that there's one God, he is moral, and governs the world by standards which are similar, if not identical, to what humans conceive of as good and evil. There are views that God either is non-moral, so he's beyond good and evil, or he could even be partially evil or completely evil, but those are not very popular for obvious reasons and are uncommon religiously. Dualism is the idea that there are two gods who are equally powerful, one good, one evil, engaged in the battle for the fate of the cosmos. Again, this has not been very popular historically, but one faith that we'll talk about, Zoroastrianism, did hold this view for at least part of its history. Polytheism, finally, is the view that there are multiple gods. Animists, who are usually identified with indigenous tribal religions, believe that there are spirits in all things. All animals, plants, even natural objects are ensouled, in effect, have spirits. More commonly, polytheists, such as believers in the Greek gods or the Norse gods from history, and in the contemporary world, Hindus and certain Buddhists, Mahayana Buddhists, believe that there are actually multiple deities. There are many different gods. Perhaps there's one whom they choose to worship, but there are many gods to choose from. Now, there are some polytheists, including many Hindus, who are what's called monistic polytheists. Although they acknowledge that there are many gods, they nevertheless ultimately believe that these different gods are simply aspects of the one ultimate reality, which they call Brahman. A side note, there are some monotheists who accuse Christians of being polytheists because of the Trinity, which we'll discuss when we talk about Christianity. Okay, moving on now to the meaning of life. And for religious people, the ultimate purpose of life, I would argue, can be divided into 5 different possibilities, which are not mutually exclusive. That you can believe in more of these at the same time. The first is the idea that the purpose of life is to prepare us for the afterlife, and our eternal fate will be determined by how we behave, what we believe while we're on earth. Also, part of the purpose of life, especially for religions like Islam and Judaism, is to obey God's laws. And as revealed by God, we are expected to follow His commandments. Okay, there are traditions, mystical traditions, mainly in the Eastern world, but also some in the West, which suggest that the purpose of life is to become unified with God. That either within this life to achieve a sense of mystical kind of harmony with God and a direct experience of God's presence, or in the afterlife. Finally, the purpose for many religious people in this life and the next is to venerate or to worship God, and that's our obligation as creatures. We owe God our existence and therefore should worship and praise Him. And again, I should point out that these different purposes are not mutually exclusive. They can be combined by different people within the same faith and the same world.